Good afternoon to those in the room with us here and those that have just joined us by TV. I appreciate your being here as we open the August meeting of the Pitt County Planning Board. We would at this time call for a roll call. Ms. Deb?
Okay. Fred Austin. Don Brown.
Here.
Naomi Buck.
Here.
David Davenport.
Here.
Madison Downing.
Here.
Thompson Forbes.
Here.
Lyman Hardy.
Here.
R.J. Hemby.
Here.
John Landron.
Here.
Steve Little.
Here.
And Charles McLaughlin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. And this time, let us do stand and we'll have a word of prayer and then a pledge of allegiance to our flag. Our Father, we come to you, Lord, just thanking you for the blessings of life. We pray right now that everything that is said and done in this meeting will be pleasing in your sight and pleasing to the citizens of Pitt County. Lord, we just thank you again for blessings of life. In Christ's name, amen. Join us as Mr. Hardy leads us in the pledge.
Thanks, flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, the chair would take a motion to approve the minutes of the
So
last
moved, Mr. Chairman.
minute. Sorry?
So motion to.
You have a
approve.
motion to approve the minutes of the last
Second, Don
meeting. I
Brown.
have a second. All in favor of that motion, please let it be known by raising your right hand. All right. The minutes have been approved. I would at this time like to open for any public addresses to the board. And at this point, I have no one that has signed up for a public address. So unless there's somebody who wants to step up, I'm going to close that portion of our meeting. Mr. Rhodes, I believe you've got an administrative matter you want to discuss with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Good to have you tonight. We do have a full complement of our 11 board members now with the addition of Thompson Forbes. You may recall Brad Guth moved to the western part of the state. He had all but finished his second term, so Mr. Forbes is joining us for the unexpired term, which amounts to about 2 months' worth. So he'll be eligible for reappointment in October, which is the end of our terms. So wanted to welcome him tonight, District 6, so you have your full complement now. Just so happens, I've mentioned about the expiration of terms, not only is it Mr. Forbes, also Ms. Naomi, yours will expire your first term, so you're eligible for reappointment. Please see tab if you haven't already, and we just need to push that forward to the commissioners to get everybody back on for the October session. So welcome, Mr. Forbes, and we did go through I'll say we tried to make a short presentation to him earlier to get him oriented to some of the things that he'd see tonight. It turned out a little bit longer than anticipated as always, but hopefully he's oriented a bit after just being appointed to this board last week. So again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Welcome, Thompson, to the board. And listen, as I look down this board tonight, it's good to see a full board and everybody in attendance. That's great. So I appreciate your endeavors to your job that you've been appointed to. So I appreciate that so much. Mr. Govey, could we have your attention now as we give you our attention to this rezoning request?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have one rezoning request for you tonight. It's by Affordable Communities Group, LLC. The request is to rezone about 4.5 acres of property owned by Tranners Creek Opportunity Zone, LLC. It's parcel number 25251. It's located on the southern side of Clark's Neck Road, west of its intersection with Gresham Lane. The request to go from rural agricultural to general commercial conditional district to allow the operation of a self-storage warehouse with additional outside storage. This is a location of the site. You see it's just about in Beaufort County. It's as far east in the county as you can get on Clarks Neck Road, just across from the Tranners Creek Resort. This is the site of the property itself. You see there's already some existing trailers and boats and storage buildings out there. It's my understanding those will be removed in order to make room for the proposed use. This is looking back towards the west up Clarks Neck Road if you were heading back towards Greenville, more into Pitt County. And this is the Tranners Creek Resort and Campground, which is across the street, which is a large RV park that's existing out there. It's a neighboring mobile home that's located adjacent to the site. And then this is a convenience store that's located just a couple lots over to the east of the site itself. Land use plan, as you see, it designates it both agricultural, open natural resource, and suburban residential. The majority of the area where the mini storage is proposed to be located is in that suburban residential. One thing I will note too, the land use map when it was originally done, the ag natural open resource was based off of the floodplains in that area. And they've been updated since then, so this area is actually not in the floodplain anymore for this site. So again, it designates it as suburban residential, agricultural open natural resource. Suburban residential is intended for residential land uses, including single-family manufactured home subdivisions, limited multifamily, commercial, office, light industrial, and public institutional uses that meet locational criteria. That criteria would include frontage and access to a major state highway or secondary road, location of major intersection and proximity to similar uses, and separation from non-compatible uses. It's distinguished by the greater potential for development and inclusion of a broader range of land uses. As I mentioned, agriculture, open natural resource, it's intended for agriculture, forestry, recreational use, and open space. Most of this area is classified as being within 100-year floodplain. Existing land, you see there's currently the commercial use with the existing storage buildings that are located on it. Some existing commercial just to the east, which is the convenience store. And then some scattered residential and recreational across the street with the RV park. The existing zoning of the area is RA. And you see there is the small general commercial where the convenience store is located to the east. GC is primarily intended to accommodate a range of retail, service, office, wholesale, and moderate density multifamily uses. And a conditional zoning, the district allows for the approval of specific use with reasonable conditions. Again, the proposed use is a self-storage warehouse or mini storage with outside storage. As part of the request, they did submit a sketch plan. You see, this is the boundary of the area. It's proposed for rezoning. They are proposing 9 mini storage units, and then the additional parking and drive area that's located on the site. Now, one of the things if the request is approved, they will have to submit a full site plan with vegetation plan and everything. Planning staff finds the request is consistent with the land use plan. The area is designated suburban residential, and there are existing general commercial zone properties and commercial land uses within 1 1/2 miles of the subject property. Staff does also find the request is reasonable and in the public interest due to its proximity to existing commercial land uses and existing general commercial zone property. And again, the site is also located adjacent to the existing RV park, Tranners Creek, which is also owned and operated by the applicant themselves. So staff does recommend approval of the request with several additional conditions. One is, again, that no zoning compliance permit shall be issued until a site plan has been prepared in accordance with the zoning ordinance is submitted for review and approval. That site plan would include a landscaping plan, which is also required, which should be screened from any adjacent residential land use and public road right-of-ways by a 10-foot wide buffer yard, planned in accordance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Required parking spaces, access drives, and loading areas must be paved and maintained with concrete, asphalt, or similar material. Also, a soil erosion sedimentation control plan approved by an engineer shall be submitted for development that results in land disturbance over 1 acre. The site will also have to comply with the Pitt County Stormwater Ordinance for nutrient control, and they'll have to obtain all required permits from inspections and environmental health for both occupancy of the structures and for wastewater disposal. and also to obtain driveway permit from NCDOT. It's time like now entertain public comments. The Board of Commissioners is scheduled to hold a public hearing on September 12th. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to open up for public comments.
At this time, we will open up the session for any public comments that might be, or public addresses to the board concerning this. And I understand we do have an engineer that's here to answer any questions we may have toward this. But right now, do we have any public addresses to the board concerning this matter? If not, I can close the public addresses to the board. Eric? At the same time, let me go back and ask the question of the board. Any questions that you may have?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question of Eric, just a simple question.
Okay.
Is there any guidance about the open space? I noticed that it's open, and of course, it won't be covered with any surface. It'll just be just an open space, but it will, I assume, in the future, have various things parked there. And there
For
isn't-
the open storage
Yeah.
area?
Right.
No, sir, we don't have any specific requirements for
Okay.
that, just the screening that's required by the zoning ordinance.
Right. So the screening would, of course, protect the residential neighbors from seeing if there were any undesirable collections of machinery and equipment on the land, right?
Yes, sir, it should provide some screening from that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from the board concerning this?
So
Yes, sir, John.
there basically isn't any recommendation, rules, or guides as far as what they're going to store there outside?
No, sir, we don't have any requirements for that. No, sir. I would assume it's probably going to be open storage, and maybe Marie can speak to this a little bit more. But I would assume probably similar to what's there in terms of boats and RVs.
Boats, yeah, that's what I thought, something like that.
And we do have Ms. Beaton available if she'd like to respond to that
Yeah,
in any
please.
way.
Yeah, be glad to. The owner is here as well, so
Oh.
if you wanted to ask them specifically, there's a representative who was able to come tonight. I am Marie Peden. I'm the engineer with Interbanks Engineering doing this project. And he's exactly correct. The owner's desire is to have storage where people who are actually in the campground
Okay.
would have a place where they could park their boat. And if they're moving sites around or things of that nature, there may be campers in those areas for a period of time and then be moving in and out.
Yeah, right. Makes sense, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. At this time, then, what is the pleasure of the board as far as granting approval or disapproval?
I move that we grant approval, Mr. Chairman.
I have an approval by Mr. McGlohorn,
Second.
a second by Mr. Hardy.
Yeah.
Okay? All in favor of that motion? Let it be known again by the raising of the right hand. All opposed, like sign? We do have approval with conditions, okay? Is that, okay, the way I read it, all right. Eric, you have some proposed amendments to the Pitt County zoning ordinance.
Yes, sir.
that you want to share.
Just one brief amendment that we have tonight. There's a request from Sawyer's Property Management Group LLC to amend Section 8 GG of the Pitt County zoning ordinance. This regulates go-kart raceways to reduce the minimum setback from residentially zoned property from 500 to 200 feet. Currently, the ordinance says no raceway shall be located within 500 feet of any residentially or office and institutionally zoned property. The request is to amend that section to say that there shall be setback a minimum of 200 feet from residentially zoned property, and shall be a minimum of 500 feet from any lot upon which an existing residence is located. So just to illustrate that a little bit, under the current setbacks, this is just a random parcel. I'll go ahead and make that caveat. This is not a site that is proposed for any type of development. This is one we chose at random. If the 500-foot setback were imposed on this property, you see the area that the raceway could be included on is about 3 1/4 acres. This is a 47 acres tract here. Under the proposed regulations, you'd still maintain the 500 feet from those properties that have residences on them, but then 200 feet from a residentially zoned property that does not have residences on it. And that would increase that size, about 10 acres. So that would allow up to about 13, almost 14 acres of land to be used. But again, you're still maintaining that same setback from the residential properties or the residential used properties that's currently in place now. We find that the amendments are consistent with the goals of the Pitt County Land Use Plan to maintain an effective jurisdiction-wide land use regulatory program. Staff does recommend approval of the proposed amendments with a proposed immediate effective date. We'd like to now entertain public comments, and this will go to the Board of County Commissioners for a public hearing also on September 12th. So with that, I'd like to open up the public comments.
Again, we open our meeting up for public comments. Do we have anyone that would like to speak to this zoning ordinance amendment? If you do, please state your name, and we'll give you 3 minutes to
And your
talk to
address.
us.
Your name and address.
Okay,
And name and address.
great. My name is Scott Anderson, 2755B Charles Boulevard in Greenville. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I think Eric did a really good job of presenting kind of the reasoning for this. Another thing that we have found with go-kart tracks especially is now go-karts have moved from old gas-powered carts that were really noisy to now they're primarily using electric carts, which has drastically reduced the amount of noise that's generated from a go-kart track. So that's our primary reason for this request. We've also run into an instance where even though a property may be residentially zoned, it's not used for residential purposes. So it could be a compatible, there's lots of uses that are in the zoning that are allowed in a residential zone, but they would be very compatible with this, such as an amusement park. There's other things like a shooting range or things that generate a lot of noise that are allowed in a residential zone that would be a good neighbor for this type of use. So that's our primary reason for coming to you with this request. I have a letter from a manufacturer of the electric go-karts, and their state that these go-karts generate 45 decibels of noise 50 feet from the go-kart. So the Pitt County Noise Ordinance allows up to 65 decibels, so we're well below what's allowable, and that's our primary reason for reducing this setback. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the board to Mr. Anderson?
Do we have a track like that in Pitt County?
We do not have any go-kart tracks in Pitt County that I'm aware of. There used to be one that was out off of Old 264, but I've been in Greenville for 24 years now, and it was closed shortly after I moved to Greenville, and well before I had kids who would love the opportunity to use it. So.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
So now the chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Gooby.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible for Sawyer's, which is a wonderful facility for Pitt County and Greenville area, but would it be possible for them to apply for a variance for that specific location rather than a countywide change of the ordinance?
No, it wouldn't be appropriate for a variance because they would have to establish some type of hardship, and this would be more of a use variance in that instance where that's not permitted. So really the most appropriate thing would be to apply for a text amendment if they can't meet the requirements. I will note too, though, that they will also have to go with Sawyer's themselves when they do the go-kart track. They will have to go through a rezoning process. So what we've recommended to them is to do is a conditional zoning district, and then they would bring their plans back to this board and the Board of County Commissioners through the rezoning process, and you have an opportunity to place any kind of additional conditions on that specific site to meet those requirements.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up on what Mr. Austin is asking, it doesn't say that electric carts will be
That's right.
required. And so both this applicant and any future applicant could go right in there and use gasoline and be 200 feet from the edge of a residential use, which you know, I don't know what the decibel level of a gasoline cart is, but it's probably a lot more than 45. I'm just following up on what Mr.
Sure.
Austin said.
Understand, I hear you.
And I follow that as well. We understand that the 200 setback is for undeveloped residential area, but with Pitt County's growth, there's good potential that it could be used as residential. And, you know, certainly the noise of the gasoline engines would be too loud. Even if at 500 feet, the gasoline engines, in my opinion, would be too loud.
Mr. Austin, if I may, the board does have the discretion that you could add to the amendment that go-karts could only be electric, too.
Mr. Chairman, I would make that motion for, I'm not against the project, I'm just against opening a gaping hole for somebody to create a use that would cause problems for neighbors in another neighborhood because they have a permanent change to our ordinance. So I would make a motion that electric carts be required under this text amendment, and then we'll deal with whatever the future has. Is that, Eric, is that okay with you?
Yes, sir.
So second?
We have a motion that we add to the amendment that it's electric carts only. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
For this language to apply, yes, sir.
Sir?
For this language to apply.
Yes, for
And
this
we'll worry
language.
about a future change if we have to.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that as part of the amendment, the only regulation or these regulations would only apply to electric go-karts, that you would not allow gas go-karts
That's
under
right.
go-kart.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Exactly.
With
That's
this
exactly
language.
what.
Gotcha.
Okay. And that is second.
Let's hear.
I have a motion by Mr. McLaurin and a second by Mr. Austin. Any other comments toward the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by the raising of the right hand. All opposed? Motion passes for that motion, right? So
Yes, sir. Thank you.
in essence, that's approval.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Envision Pitt County 2045 Steering Committee meeting.
Right. Sorry, this is not actually a steering committee meeting. That was left on there. No, this is just going to be a brief update tonight.
To where we are.
Yeah, there hasn't been much movement this month since your last meeting, which was your steering committee meeting. As of right now, though, we are working to continue meeting when conducting these specialized working group meetings. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting set tomorrow with a transportation working group that will be meeting virtually to discuss transportation issues in the county, anything from new road construction, proposed roads, greenways, bike ped facilities, that sort of thing. So we'll be meeting with those folks tomorrow to discuss those and try to figure out how to include those in the land use plan. Then we'll also continue to develop the draft plan and the land use map, and your actual next steering committee meeting is proposed for next month tentatively. So hopefully we'll be holding our third meeting, and then we'll have our folks, Jake and folks from Stewart, come in, talk to you again kind of about where they are with the process.
Good deal. Thank you,
And
sir.
again, this is just as another reminder, we've got our website for the project, envisionpittcounty2045.com. So if you have any questions or need any additional information, or if anybody that's watching the meeting tonight or that you might know personally has any questions about it, please direct them to that website or have them call our office.
Good deal. Thank you, sir. Ben, let's talk about the comprehensive transportation plan update.
Thank you, Chairman. Staff want to present an update on a project we've been working on since, I believe, September 2020 is when we started getting our steering committee together for the update to the Pitt County Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Tonight, just wanted to give a little bit more thorough update since we are getting to kind of the end stages of this project. Tonight is just for informational purposes only. Local adoptions are tentatively scheduled for early 2023. So the topics I'll be touching on this evening is what is a comprehensive transportation plan, the recommendations for Pitt County, and then the next steps and schedule. So what is a comprehensive transportation plan? It is a long-range multimodal transportation plan. So that means we're looking at all forms of transportation, whether it be highway, bike and pedestrian, local rail, if there's any, not necessarily in Pitt County, we don't have any, but that would be included as well. So we're looking at kind of a long-range, far out into the future multimodal plan. This is developed among local stakeholders, the Greenville MPO, the Mideast RPO, Pitt County, as well as the municipalities in Pitt County, and NCDOT. As part of this update we're rolling out, we have, since August 1st, been going to all the municipalities within Pitt County, both Pitt County staff, NCDOT staff, as well as some of the local town planners like in Winterville and Ayden. They're on our steering committee. They've been making presentations to their own boards. Again, this is a long-range transportation plan, so we're looking at needs for the year 2045, and this is required by NC General Statute. The CTP does incorporate land use plans, community and statewide goals. The recommendations within this plan are concepts. So at this point, they are recommendations that both the steering committee and information we've received from the public. We did have a public input survey in I think that was last spring. We had about 1,800 responses, so we use that as well to kind of put in some of these recommendations. So they will go into the plan. These projects would still have to be funded. After that, the design phase would go through DOT. So we're just kind of looking at goals that both the community and the steering committee wants to see long-term, like I said, for 2045. Just to give you a big picture idea of where we are in this process, so the CTP is part of the long-range planning, determining that need that I just spoke on. After that, the projects will be funded and then hopefully funded, but scored and then funded at the state level and regional level as well, competing against other projects both locally and at the statewide level. At that point, if it's funded, the project planning and design would begin. That's when DOT would start looking at minimizing impacts on the environment, as well as just the design at that point. And then construction will begin, and then after that is kind of the end maintenance and operation of that specific project. So within this plan, there are 94 highway recommendations and 157 bike and pedestrian recommendations. In front of each of y'all, there's a pretty thick packet. It has about 8 or 9 maps in it, as well as a several-page list of all the highway recommendations. And they are numbered not in any type of priority, but so that you can reference this on the map and kind of have an idea of what is proposed currently. The plan is a draft, so we're still taking recommendations. So if there's anything that you see fit, we could discuss that as well as look at that with our steering committee and see if there's any additional projects that need to be included. Like I said, those are pretty thick set of maps there with a lot of information in there, but it kind of gives a good idea of what we've worked on to this point.
Ben, may I just interrupt you
sir.
just a second? Now this list of 94 items, it's not in a priority?
It is not, no sir. So it's just kind of so you can identify it on the highway recommendations map and then look at that number associated with that project and get a more detailed explanation as to what it is, whether it's a safety project, a road widening project, or things of that nature. So not in any type of priority.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
These are two of the maps that are in that packet. Both the highway map you see on the left, it's small obviously, but it has numbers on there that you can associate then with that list of projects listed out. And then on the right is the highway the bike and pedestrian projects. So public involvement, we'll be scheduling public drop-in sessions, hopefully October, November for the holidays. We're looking at having a couple of in-person sessions throughout the county, as well as hopefully doing a virtual to give folks an opportunity to be able to watch from home. Just to again, review these maps and provide any feedback if there's any additional. We do have a project website, and we are conducting another survey at this time to kind of provide feedback on the maps that are in their current draft form. The final steps, like I mentioned earlier, in early 2023, we will be going back out to all the towns and kind of requesting that they adopt either the portion of the plan within their planning jurisdiction or kind of endorsing the entire project, the entire document. At that time, we will be coming back before this board to kind of show you the final document that will hopefully be approved and endorsed by the commissioners. And once all the local adoptions are done, NCDOT, the State Transportation Board, will have final adoption on that plan. So this is something the county's been wanting to get going for a while now. And then Mr. Rhodes has been pushing for that, and DOT does these for all the counties in the states. There's kind of a rotation with that, so it's nice to finally get this project going. Like I said, we're getting to the final stages now and wanted to get this update tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And you might not know the answer. Five-Tower Road widening. It's about 3 or 4 years old now. And Just seems like everything,
I know that project got delayed. James, do you know specifically? I know that one in Evans Street.
Again, that would not be on this plan because it's more immediate, a more immediate need, and there's been a lot of discussion, especially, are you talking about the extension?
no.
Which end are you
they-
talking about?
They were gonna widen all the way from Bell's Forks over to 33.
So that's if we were to go back to, just to orient you a little bit, that particular project is already past the design stage, so it's way down. We're looking at construction now. That has been postponed. The last information I've got, it's been moved back up a couple of years because there is such a pressing need. So that would take that whole area from, it's in two legs. It starts at Bell's Fork at NC 43, goes to 14th Street, that's one segment. Then the next segment will pick up from 14th Street, run all the way out to 10th Street Extension or NC 33. So it's still on the docket. Funding's been appropriated for it. It's still at least a couple of years away before construction starts. Right-of-way acquisition would be first, and that should be forthcoming soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ben?
Yes, sir.
On the public transportation and rail recommendations, and I can see the urban fixed bus corridors and expansions or proposed expansions. I don't seem to see any regional or rural on there.
Is that something that you like to propose or just that you see lacking?
I do see lacking, I don't know, if this is proposed, so then, well, even existing, just see nothing here at all. So one, I'm trying to make sure that's correct.
Right. So as a part of this process, and we've had to have this conversation with our steering committee members, is that we can't just throw everything on there. There needs to be not just a need, but a realistic need as far as, otherwise we would just show bicycle and pedestrian sidewalks on every street in Pitt County because that's the most ideal situation for safety. The DOT looks at whether it be trips per day, the number of cars going back and forth on that roadway when they're determining if it's a widening, if it's a safety project. They need to have a need on top of just the origin and destination for that specific project. With that specifically, I can ask DOT if that's something they've looked into. But are you thinking more of like a rural bus route in general to kind of hit those gaps?
I mean, I know there's no way to determine that need through traffic because a lot of those people simply don't have the cars, period. But there could be a real need there. I think there is. Exactly how to go about, quantifying that,
Right.
I'm not sure.
Yes,
but-
sir. Yeah, we have on our steering committee the PATS director. That's the local, I guess, van route where you can call and sign up. I guess that's different than what you're talking about, where there's a fixed route.
Right.
And James, I don't know if there's more you might want to add to that as far as that real need for a bus route.
Yeah, at this point, again, we do have, I'll say, on-demand transit available through our Pitt area transit system. So that's one thing versus fixed route. Certainly the city with their great bus system has a fixed route system, and they're looking to expand that. I won't say it's actually shown in this plan, but there's a separate transit plan for that. So again, as we've talked about, the demand, let's just say north of the river going to our other county site where we've got public health, social services, that's already on our fixed bus route through the city of Greenville. So we've got concentrated areas. I think there's 6 existing routes. In the future, the city is looking at expanding that. We have tried some fixed routes with the PATS system. We had one that ran up to Bethel for a while. It was just not sufficient demand, very little demand for that. So with that, we've gone back to just on demand. You call in, make an appointment, the Pat's van runs to that location to pick you up and take you to your other site where you want to go. So that's the best we've got to offer with the limited resources right now. In the future, I could see possibly running to extended municipalities, whether it be to Winterville or to Aden, again, where there's another concentration of folks to bring them in for services in the larger area like the city of Greenville.
So right now, though, there are proposed expansions to, like the areas you were talking about, social services, DMV, out in, to that area?
Actually, there's already a fixed bus route out to
Yeah,
our
I know there's
northern campus, so
Right.
that's already on the great bus route. DMV, I don't believe it runs to the new DMV out off Martin Luther King Boulevard, but certainly there's another DMV office right here adjacent to the hospital that is on one of the routes as well. So I'm certain there are other needs out there for destinations, and again, in the more urbanized area, that's going to be treated through the city's great bus route. Remember also, the university runs its own bus system too, especially for the students.
Thanks, sir.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your work and the diligence that we've got going on. Mr. Rhodes?
Yes, and I'd just like to also acknowledge Ben's work on this. We've been at it for 2 years straight. We've been serving as the lead agency for this project, and again, handling it virtually. Typically, most of our meetings, we have 20, 25, 30 folks involved. There's a lot of discussion. So again, takes a lot of organization, and Ben's done a yeoman's job in all that. So moving on along to the informational items, just to give you a better idea of what maybe goes on behind the scenes at our office during a normal week. We've given you the complete work program, but I've reduced it to one slide here on your screen right now. So most of you already realize our big project is the update of the land use plan for a number of reasons. So you're here, you're serving as the steering committee, and in turn, we hope to wrap that out, if at all possible, by the end of the year or early next year. Our comprehensive transportation plan is another big ticket item. We want to complete that in the upcoming few months too, but there's several other tasks that have to be completed before that happens. We brought before you, this group, a number of different development regulations that have changed because of the modernization of the planning statutes. There are also new improvements to some of our other development regulations that are state mandated. Those in particular are our stormwater regulations, and you'll be hearing more about that, not only for just the Tar-Pamlico Basin, but remember about 40% of our land areas in the Neuse Basin. So we're bringing both of those through concurrently. There's also some flood studies in both those basins, river basins as well. You may know that our office is heavily involved with recreation right now, certainly at the Alice King District Park, but also at several of the school sites throughout the county with community schools and recreation. I will say, stay tuned. Next week, we're moving forward with our American Rescue Plan funds and how those might be shared around our community. We're hopeful that we'll get a lot of new recreation facilities that will be beneficial to everyone in the county. So it won't just be one area of the county, it'll be hopefully scattered in at least north and south of the river, if nothing else. So the other things, community development, we just held our annual meeting for folks that feel like they may qualify for some of our housing repair funds. We had about 30 households that attended that. We already have a waiting list. We're looking to use some more American Rescue Plan funds to help pare down that waiting list. So all said, this may be folks that may need some handicap accessibility built into their home because they may be older, elderly, or disabled. So in turn, we're hoping to get supplemental funds in to get more folks served through those programs. Homeless programs, our community, you might not see it every day, but there's a serious need for additional housing, and especially for folks that are homeless at this point. So we're constantly looking for grant funds, and there's also some requests in through the American Rescue Plan funding to help supplement those programs. And of course, Mr. Hemby would be remiss if I didn't mention about flood recovery efforts and hazard mitigation. We're constantly looking at ways of improving, getting folks out of harm's way. And yes, we thought we had missed the boat this time where we wouldn't be responsible for the administration of the Hurricane Florence buyout program. We felt like the state had a new program. We were going to take advantage of that. Well, they had a shortage of contractors, so it looks like we will be taking on that buyout program as well, and we'll integrate that into our work program. So just know we're still very involved with hazard mitigation, and in particular, buying out some of those properties that have been previously flooded. A lot of other items in there. Welcome any of your questions or comments about the work program. Okay, onward from that, most of you realize it's a big ticket item just a month or two ago where US 264 between our county line on the western side and into the southwest bypass has now been renamed to Interstate 587. Well, that was a big news item. It's a big improvement for us, especially for economic development purposes. But for us in our office, it also means some road name changes, and for some people in our community, some address changes as far as how they'll receive mail and E911 services. So we took that before the board to make everything clear. I-587, US 264 now has resumed its old location. What was named US 264 alternate is now US 264. However, we went in and made some other changes as far as extending roads. Mr. Austin, you may know, out of Farmville east and west, so we're using Marlboro Road versus the numbered road. We've learned the hard way. Sometimes it's not good to go with numbers because DOT tends to change those numbers. So all said, we took care of all those, and some of the addresses will be changing in the near future. We also have our departmental monthly report in there, some other correspondence, some articles that Tabs gathered through the month, some recreationally involved. If you didn't read the article about Alice Keene Park, that actually is an interview with Miss Alice Keene herself, great article. We're very proud of that, and if you hadn't had an opportunity to get out there, please make it out to the park. That natural trail is something to behold this time of the year. A lot of other correspondence and articles involved, and again, always a lot more information on our website that's listed on the screen. And as Eric said, we also are directing people best we can to our land use plan website and making sure that they're getting all the information they might want. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's all we have for tonight, unless you have questions.
Good deal. Questions for the board?
Well, you know the final number on the survey?
$355. So that wasn't bad. We were hoping to cap 400, didn't quite make it there.
Okay, good deal. James, again, to you and your staff, I think we owe a debt of gratitude for the work that you do put in, and we don't see everything that's going on behind the scenes, but what you do bring to us to educate us as individuals on this board, but also to the citizens of Pitt County. We appreciate what you're doing. to the board, I'd like to say, yes, you're a nice-looking board, especially when we're all complete. You even got smiles on your faces. So, welcome, Thompson, to the board. And we do look for the expertise that each one of these members bring to the citizens of Pitt County and to the staff. And staff, again, thank you much. David, I want to thank you for the last time filling in for me, and I appreciate that. You did a great job. You can have it anytime.
I tried to get us a raise, but it didn't work out.
Oh, okay. We'll see if we can't bring that up again some other time, okay? Any other comments from the board? If not, at this point, we shall adjourn. And I get to hit it. Okay.
I would like to get another.